Well, expectations continue to mount concerning what should the president, what should the government do about security. We're continuing our focus on setting the agenda. Markwe.
Thank you, Chamberlain. I have with me in the studio this morning two gentlemen. Mr. Greg Esele is a retired Assistant Commissioner of Police and also a member of the Association of Chiefs of Police. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you. Good morning.
We also have with us Mr. Yakubu, beg your pardon, he has a PhD, Dr. Yakubu Joseph, who is a security and peace researcher and also a political geographer. I just asked him before we came on this program, what does political geographer mean? But maybe he'll explain again, but you're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much.
For the benefit of our viewers, just summarily, can you just quickly state what a political geographer does?
Thank you. Political geography simply looks at the relationship between politics and geography, because we believe politics takes place in a space, and therefore, well, political scientists capture political phenomena, look at political phenomena. We feel that they miss the spatial dimension of politics.
Interesting. Very interesting, because when I looked at political geographer, what came to my mind is he one of those people who broke us along lines of, I don't know, broke the states, so to speak, and then, you know, sometimes there have been lots of crises when you look at the borders between states. You find out that brothers who essentially should come from the same state, you know, across states, and there's sometimes some conflicts as to where our border is and where our border. So, well, pardon me, but gentlemen, and sometimes it does border on security, because sometimes we get some crisis from it. But let's sink our teeth into setting an agenda for the government, and not just the federal government also, but also for the states, especially when you look at states saying that we're so powerless. I don't know if you agree with them in terms of, you know, ensuring security in our states because we do not control any security apparatus. Let me get your thoughts on that, Mr. Esele. Do you agree with governors when they say that?
Good morning. Thank you for that. For me personally, and from a professional level, there's a constitutional provision that states that all state governors are the chief security officers of the state. And every state has what they call the Security Council that meets regularly to discuss security issues, and the rest of them made up of the Commissioner of Police, the armed military commanders and other service commanders, as well as heads of paramilitary agencies, including the intelligence services and the rest of them. So to some extent, it always baffles me when governors complain about their inability to manage the security apparatus of their states. Because being members of this committee, of this council, one expects that on the basis of security services to the states and proximate states, all service commanders, including commissioners of police, are responsible to the governor of the state. That is one. It's a constitutional provision, so no running away from that.
They are responsible to the...
Yes, to the governors of the state. But then, within that same context too, for operational issues, there are times that service commanders will have to make reference to their service headquarters for clarification when it comes to some issues that they believe the implication could transcend or go beyond you call it the geographical space of the state itself. Because if you don't manage it well, it might roll over to the other state and the rest of them. So there has to be this how they call it, back check or clearance from the headquarters before you can act or so. So yes, they may not have technical command of the forces on the ground, but they have administrative commands over them.
Is that enough?
Yeah, yes, to some extent it is, because like if you check too, we have security votes for every state, and these votes are used for the running in a supplementary manner to the services that are in these states, especially for the police and paramilitary and then the military forces itself. That's why some time past, you hear the just a minute past governor of Borno State telling you they spent a sizable chunk of their state resources to assist in managing the forces in Borno State.
Well, I know it's one debate that will go on and on. You know, it's interesting that that's your view on it, that governors cannot just say that, you know, oh, the governors have administrative control. They cannot just say that, you know, we're totally helpless in this regard. I see that you were nodding, you know, while he was speaking, so I assume that you agree with him largely. Do you?
Well, I approach this issue from a very different angle. I think I do agree with him first that they have power. And here we have to look at power in different forms. So if you talk about, you know, the deployment of force, you know, when the need arises, there you can say, well, they don't quite have it because the commander-in-chief, the president, has that prerogative. So, but they can influence even the decision of the commander-in-chief because as the chief security officer of the state, you pass information to the president. And on the basis of the recommendation that the governor passes on to the president, action can be taken. So in terms of access to the president, the governor has access to the president and he can make certain recommendation which will be reviewed by this national security team to see whether the governor's recommendations are in line with the understanding of the team. Now, I think also when we talk about power, you can leverage other forms of influences that the governor has. He knows his people. The traditional institution is there. He can network with the traditional institution. He can network with various social groups and try to appeal for calm. So there is a sort of soft power also that is being underutilized. So I think that we cannot underestimate the power of the governor when it comes to dealing and addressing problems that arise in his domain.
I wish the governor were here. I mean, it will be very interesting to see what it is that they have to say in that regard. But, I mean, while we wait for them to react to that, let us talk about security right now, what is currently happening in the country. A lot of people will say that we are in dire straits. There is no area of the country that you look to that doesn't seem to be battling with its own challenges. And interestingly, I mean, it's a good thing we have a retired assistant commissioner of police. Beg your pardon?
Yes,
an assistant commissioner of police. Yes. You served in the Nigeria police.
Yes,
people are saying that the Nigeria police seems to be overwhelmed largely. When you look at some operations that ordinarily ought to be taken on, the very fact that the police is not handling internal security matters alone, you know, points in that direction. And when you look at, say, just yesterday, I think the commander of Operation Safe Haven in Plateau State was given a press briefing on the number of criminals that they had in their custody, or let's say suspects they had in their custody, and we're parading them. And the first thing that came to me was, shouldn't this have been the function of the police? Isn't this what the police ought to be doing? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. For task forces, or joint task forces, it's an amalgam. We have services, other services. The military is head, like that of just the police, the component. We have the civil defense. We have the SSS. We have one or two other military and what they call it paramilitary agencies that are working with the task forces. So whenever arrests are made, when they are made, they profile the suspects before they are arranged and handed over to the police. The police will police is the only agency that will prosecute the suspects based on the evidence they've gotten from the activity that led to their arrest. You will recall the instance of the Major General that was killed along this just route, where the military task force came in, both from the army headquarters and from Safe Haven itself. They were able to drain this. After everything was done, they handed over everybody to the police. To the question of being overwhelmed, to some extent, we will say because of the activities we have on the ground, like you talked about, this geospatial thing, virtually every aspect of the country is it's in one problem or the other, challenged here and there. And when you look at the ratio of the police to the population, if we're going by the national by the population projection that were made, so we're about 200 million Nigerians, and then you talk of the UN ratio of 400 to one policeman to 400. At 200 million, with what we have, let's give about 380,000 policemen. That you're talking of an average of 500 and something policemen to an individual, and in any situation where nothing is happening, you can reasonably assume that this number of policemen can handle this. But we are not in a stable situation now. We have crises here, there. So policemen are deployed virtually everywhere. Yes, they have the capacity, but they have so many things to do at the moment. So that is why you have the military getting involved in low-intensity internal activities in support of the police and other services. Yeah.
It doesn't seem like they are supporting the police. It looks the other way around.
No. So it seems in the media, but operationally, tactically on the ground, we work in unison. Yes, the task force is headed by a serving military general, but members, we have, in most instances, their deputies are police officers.
Aren't impressions important? Aren't impressions, yes. Public perception?
Yes, public perception. Public perception has to do more because of the visibility of the military. Their visibility and the fact that they are more robustly involved in these activities. So it looks as if they are controlling these things. Yes, they are.
I know this is a very delicate matter because when it comes to press briefings and things of the sort, I mean, if the military did the bulk of the work, you just talked about them having, being more robustly involved, for instance, it might be a little odd if a police commissioner, for instance, or somebody perhaps about the same rank with the, when you look at the equivalence of their ranks, maybe somebody of that rank in the police should be doing the briefing, for instance. They might feel that, oh, we did the work. You guys are trying to take the glory, so to speak. Those matters are usually quite delicate. But for the face of the public, we're talking about internal security matters, and we're talking about, perhaps even raising the confidence of the police, for instance. Don't you think that these kinds of matters are important?
Yeah, I think with the observation you're raising now, perhaps there will be need for future, that's going forward for the military, yes, getting involved, but perhaps the briefings and the rest of them should be the face of the police. But I tell you, this is something that at the state levels are discussed, because I had opportunity of being a member of these task forces, and I've headed BOIs too. Yeah. But there are some that the police heads, but most task forces are headed by the military, and that is it's a boost actually. It's a boost, but then public perception might look as if the police is abdicating their responsibility to the military. No, they are not. They work in unison. That is why even as we speak, we have joint training operations, joint trainings and operations, so that will remove, instances of disagreements and then, misgivings about some things, so that because we working for the same purpose, which is security for Nigeria.
I think at this point, I must say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, these are just questions I'm asking. I mean,
yes, go ahead.
What do you think? What are your thoughts on it? When you see, a military commander giving a briefing on internal operations that happen in the state, yes, we do know that it's been a bit troublesome in Plateau State, and things have come down a great deal. But, when you look at the history, is it something that gives you confidence as a Nigerian, or do you think that when we say that we have totally lost it in terms of civil operations of the police?
Thank you. I'm going to take you back to 1999 when the country was returning to democracy. I was among those thinking that now our military will be confined to the barracks and having nothing to do, because Liberia was cooling down, Sierra Leone cooling down. I thought, okay, now the military will have nothing to do. But all of a sudden you see the military are involved in the maintenance of internal security. They are being overstretched. They are dealing with Boko Haram in the northeast and pockets of insecurity almost all over the country. Now, this is not normal. It's not normal. And I agree that the police are overwhelmed. And we look at the police, we have to talk about the question of capacity. First, I think in today's warfare, even asymmetrical warfare, to engage bandits, for example, you need equipment, you need technology. It's not even about sheer number of the police force. You need technology, you need surveillance, you need intelligence, gathering equipment. The sophistication is what matters today. We're talking about quality.
Not just the numbers.
Right? Yeah, not just the numbers, and also the motivation. You know, driving through Abuja streets in the night, almost, depending on the type of car you drive, you simply receive compliment from the police on the streets. It's so embarrassing. If they are well taken care of, and I'm not really underplaying or discounting the huge sacrifice they make, the officers and gallant men and women of the military and the police are doing their trying, they are doing their best under the circumstances they have found themselves. But the truth is, the question of motivation, you know, that there are instances where you hear that the police compromise, some elements are compromising their duty, you know, for some kind of personal gains. So I think issue of motivation needs to be looked into. There is also the question of inter-agency cooperation and collaboration between the military, the police, and other security agencies. I think, you know, when you bring the military in, definitely the military will step forward, you know, by the nature of their training. You know, I had an exchange with one, you know, military officer, and I said to him, so tell me about your rule of engagement when you step into internal security issues like that. He said the military are trained to shoot from the chest upward. Now, the police, they know that if there is a criminal, you want to shoot him from the chest downward, so that you can actually don't destroy evidence, because that evidence can lead to actually findings which will help improve security situation. So I think that the police need to be equipped to be able to take the lead in internal security. It's not normal that we have the military involved. But the situation in Nigeria in general is also not normal. I'm beginning to you know, play around with the concept of failed state and failed society. I think what we're experiencing in Nigeria, in my opinion, has to do a little bit with the failure of society, really. The ethos of violence has really been spreading over these past years. Life is no longer sacred, killings everywhere, you know, and sometimes I wonder, how would you contend a situation like that? So we are dealing with something that is unprecedented, and therefore, really, even the security forces have to devise measures that can catch up with this evolving and mutating phenomena of violence that we see in our country. They need actually to be in the boardroom to strategize. You need really to have the best brains come in. And I think also, even though we have security problems, the root of those problems are not just security. We have to have a wider, you know, view of it.
I was just going to come to that, you know,
right.
in terms of when you look at the different spaces. I mean, you are a political geographer. Is there anything in our political geography that has made the security challenges that each region faces, because sometimes it would seem that the crisis is by regions, that has made the security challenges that each region has unique?
Yes, indeed. If you go to the Niger Delta, you find in the creeks, you know, there is a subculture there that has emerged. You know, I recently, I was supporting a PhD student and who came to me to kind of guide her. And she went into the creeks and also visited some communities, and she found that there are even young children whose dream is to become militant, because being a militant means that you'll be swimming in dollars. And this is really a tragedy.
So we created new role models.
Yeah, this is a tragedy, you know. So we need to look at that, what has happened really with the situation in the Niger Delta. In the northeast, in parts of the Katsina State and Zamfara State, what we're seeing today, you know, from the activities of the bandits. It has political and economic roots, and you have to get into it. And I think politics cannot escape the blame. The kind of politics we have, its divisive nature, the zero-sum approach to politics, it itself a seed of discord that we are sowing. Secondly, I think also the nature of political economy that we are operating in this country, what I call economic ecumenism, where we just come to Abuja and collect money and go back. The states are not expanding their potentials. They are not exploring and exploiting the potentials they have. And therefore, a lot of what we see going on has to do really with about, you know, the elites, you know, trying to capture resources. And, you know, the trickle-down effect that used to be there is no longer there. So the measures that are being put in place today is also squeezing people. And so, you know, these socioeconomic problems are pushing people out. That's why kidnapping has become widespread. Mm. The cashless policy that we're trying to operate, which I believe is the right direction, also has security implication. In the past, robbers will stop you on the way and they demand money, or they come to your house and get cash. Because today we don't carry money when we travel, they just simply kidnap people and you are forced to go and look for cash anywhere. Even babies as old as 3 months are being kidnapped. Don't you think something is wrong with us? I think there is something that this country has to wake up. And I don't think that the political leadership is getting it. For the fact that when we hear them blaming each other for the insecurity, in other parts of the world, when there is any incident of insecurity, for example, even 10 people are killed, it's enough to bring people across the aisles together. Mm. Political parties will come together and stand for national security and national unity, affirm their commitment to work together.
Very interesting angle you bring in on that, on the effect or perhaps the consequence of the cashless policy, which, you know, we haven't thought about before, or maybe perhaps hasn't come to light before now. But, you know, people say that when you understand what the problem is, when you understand the genesis of the problem, perhaps you can begin to look for the solutions. And I'm sure that that's where you wear the cap. People like him will look for the root of the problem, and then you must be able to find solutions based on the prognosis that they come up with. It doesn't look good for a lot of Nigerians. What exactly are some of the solutions, or what should be some of the solutions, if they're not already being thought up, that the police and perhaps other security agencies should be looking at?
He has spoken about the social, political, and economic angle to these problems. You're looking at it from the aspects of the security agencies. For the police, where I served, at least I was with the UN in Liberia and Afghanistan, and I was in Sierra Leone also. In Afghanistan, I was involved in reform of the police and then the rest of them. So here in Nigeria, for the police itself, we have those agitating for state police. This is based on the fact that they believe perhaps if indigenous policemen are meant to police their space, you will have a better understanding of community relations. You'll be able to survey the society very well, community very well. You're to gather intelligence.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. I apologize, but we have to take a break. When we come back, I'll let you finish your thoughts. Please stay with us. Mr. Greg Estelle and Dr. Yakubu Joseph are still with us in the studio. We're talking about setting an agenda for governments that have just been inaugurated, from the federal to the state governments, especially in the area of security, because their primary duty is to ensure the security of lives and property. Just before we went on break, you were talking about providing unique solutions based on the unique problems faced by the different geopolitical zones, so to speak.
Yeah, that is true. I was trying to talk about
the police,
the agitation
for state police.
Yeah. And I'm sure a committee has been set up based on the report from the NIPS, from the cost on NIPS, submitted to the Vice President. The committee has been set up to look at this report, and come up with ideas on how they could look into it and see if it's workable to have state police. But for that is going forward. For now, presently, what we will expect the police to do is to appreciate that we have a problem on the ground. Appreciating that problem and then trying to see how best we could deploy resources that we have.
And we're not saying the police already appreciate
yes,
the problem.
No, they are, but the thing is, appreciating it at least at the magnitude it is, the magnitude of the problem, and then the attention that it deserves. Because what we have is a reactive policing, response now. It happens, you react, and once there's a calm within the environment, you pull back and wait for another one to happen. Now, what has happened in the past, Benue was hot. They sent one DIG with 2 helicopters. 3 days after, the man left, came back to Abuja. And another day, something happened in Zamfara. They sent the same thing. They were able to mop up some suspects, killed about 100 or thereabout, came back again and started waiting. So we should go beyond that.
Let's quickly take questions from my colleagues in Lagos. I believe they have questions for you.
Well, yes, gentlemen, I'd like to get your views on this matter because it comes up in the light of that argument as to whether or not licenses should be withdrawn and what happens to those small and light weapons in the country. Now, there was this judgment delivered by Honorable Justice Owana in Akwa Ibom State in March this year. And it involved 7 people. 6 of them were found guilty on 3-count charge. Some of the charges was cancelling, aiding, sponsoring, kidnapping, which they said it was contrary to Akwa Ibom State's internal security law. Now, some policemen were amongst those who were found guilty of this. And they say, look, this trend, even though reported in some quarters, but now it's come to light and the judgment is there that some policemen actually do aid and abet robbery. So, Mr. Sela, I'd like to ask you, while you're on the force, is there any internal measure that is put in place to ensure that police or those in service who find themselves or who engage in this kind of practice, giving their guns to robbers, are checked? Because it does appear as though, well, at least the public don't have information concerning if the police are doing anything about this.
Yes. For one, every policeman is conscious of the fact that you must have a reason to sign for or book for a firearm, and depends on where you're going to serve. For the mobile police force, you're almost with your gun virtually around the clock. But for the regular policeman, he only books for a gun when he's going out for work. And then you have rules guiding and regulating the use, the signing, the custody and use of these guns. For renegade police, for policemen that are involved in criminal activities, maybe involving firearms and the rest of them, and the law, we have to. One is the internal disciplinary mechanism that we have for in talk of the law itself for the country. Depends, because if you are a policeman, once you're found with such gross misconduct, because like in the police, if you lose an ammunition, it's an offense. If you lose the firearm itself, it's outright dismissal. So, but if you now commit armed robbery with your gun, or you support in committing them, because when you look at parties to a crime, every person that supports a criminal is involved in a crime. And a policeman that aids such crime is tried and punished as the criminal himself. First of all, the police would dismiss the officer before he's made to face trial. So it's not as if the police condones that, no. But then it depends on the public. We say this because when things happen like this, in everyone that we get to know of, the police will always take full action. No matter how you do. You remember the case of this notorious kidnapper that was killed about 2-3 months back or so. He was a dismissed policeman, but after dismissal, he formed his own kidnapping gang, terrorizing the East and the rest of them. But we gunned him down. So what we tell you is that the police has internal mechanisms to expose itself. It's a self-cleansing thing. It is a self-cleansing thing. We have that one and it's standing there.
Let me ask the
doctor. There.
All right, Dr. Joseph. Yeah, do you think that it is a good idea to withdraw all licenses from those who have private citizens who have got guns at this time?
I think that there has been some mixed messaging on this because after the move by the House of Representatives, we had a report from the Office of the IGP that there has not been any pronouncement to that effect. So I think that needs to be clarified. Those who have acquired arms legally, they have got the license. I think they can still have it. But if there are problems associated with having guns even legally, which I don't think is the main problem, then the process of licensing should be reviewed because the Constitution has made a clear provision. If you look at the Firearms Act, made clear provisions, and it's not a right to bear arms after all. It's just something that is granted to a person or group at the discretion of the president or the IGP in that matter. But I think we need to look at why do we even have this conversation. Something certainly has gone wrong, and that is because the level of insecurity in the country, and people are resorting to self-help because people feel that they are not getting adequate protection from those that have the statutory responsibility to protect them. And we're talking about the police being overstretched. We're talking about the phenomenon of crime, which has changed so much today. In the past, we talked about certain criminal activities confined to particular geographical regions. Today, for example, kidnapping has become widespread. Intercommunal conflicts are still wreaking havoc in our communities, especially in the central states and in the northeast. Banditry in the northwest, and so I think that people feel as the police become overstretched, people feel the need, it's part of self-preservation. They feel the need to resort to self-help, and this itself portends a danger, when people have to do it, because there has been a wisdom on why, the state has the prerogative to protect its people, because the state can do it in a regulated manner. And I think if you just leave it to the citizens, it's difficult to really know whether people are using their claim of self-defense for the right reason, or they use it, for criminal activities or settling scores with their neighbors. So I think for me, I personally do not, as much as I feel that there is no need to revoke the license, I also personally feel that guns are never the solution. I think we need to get to the roots of the crisis. Our population has hit 200 million. If you look at the percentage of the segment of the population that are between the ages of 18 and 25, we're talking about over 50%. The level of unemployment in the country, the economic crunch that people are feeling right now, and the environmental problems that are pushing people also losing their livelihoods and pushing them to going into some criminal activities as a way to survive. I think we need to take a very frontal approach to these issues, address the root causes. At the same time, I believe crime control is important. We cannot relegate it for the sake of doing some preventive measures. The two can go hand in hand, complementing each other, but definitely,
if I may butt in,
we need in our conversation.
My apologies, if I may butt in and ask Mr. Esele this question. What, in your view, can be done to the shrinking Lake Chad? Because that seems to be one of the areas where these kinds of herdsmen, farmers conflict has come and has arisen from time to time. More so that the president has asked the OIC to do more within that region and will be meeting with the heads of member states in Abuja on June 12th to try to resolve these terrorist acts within that region. What more can be done about that leak?
For now, no. And some years back, there was this plan to see how they could refresh the Lake Chad, because it was shrinking at an alarming rate due to global warming and other factors and the rest of them. But then it's a capital-intensive thing, and so that is an issue that is still ongoing. But in itself, because of the shrinking lake and the fact that it is affecting the means of livelihood of residents of communities within this lake, the vegetation, the maritime, you know, what they call it, resources, and the rest of them, it's shrinking. So you don't have a situation where a lot of people, the citizens within, inhabitants within this area, are not dependent on the shrinking lake for sustenance of their means of livelihood, and at the same time trying to see how they could get alternative means of livelihood. So it's an issue that the president is very much aware of, and they've held several meetings in the past with, you know, with the presidents of the states, including the commanders of the military, essentially, to see how they could manage the security situation within the Lake region. Because what we know for now is that because of the vegetation of this place, it provides, because it has like kind of, yes, it's in Sahel, but then it has you know, full vegetation like a tropical place. So it provides a lot of how do I call it, canopy for the insurgents to build their bases and do a lot and reside within the communities that are within these places. So for us as a country, the most effective way of policing the Lake Chad itself, our part of it anyway, is we may have to deploy technology. We just have to deploy technology.
Well, that's
satellite-based technology, web-based technology, and the rest, so that we can have like a geofencing or geotagging of this location. It makes it a lot easier for us to respond.
Technology is one thing. Do you want to add anything else in terms of solutions to, you know, tackling the current security challenges that we face?
I would say that let us not limit ourselves to looking at every problem from a national security perspective. Rather, let's look at it as a human security issue. If you look at it as a human security issue, your attention will go to some of the underlying causes, you know, of these problems. And therefore, we cannot leave all the security problems in the hands of the military or the police, for example. That there are other actors as stakeholders. We all have roles to play. So if you look at the unemployment in the country, if you look at our education, I studied and I taught in the university in Germany, and I know actually what we taught our students. By the time they come out, before they graduate, they have gone through internship, they have acquired some practical skills that they can actually use. Our educational system here in Nigeria is very different. A lot of people just come out with certificate and have nothing really to offer. They can't really go create anything, I mean, jobs. And I think it's really wrong for the government that, you know, we have a new administration in place. You know, I think it's wrong for government to be talking, we will be creating jobs. You don't create jobs. You create the enabling environment. You stimulate, you know, creativity, innovation, you know, and get, you know, young people have perspective. They're going to create the jobs. Private sector will create the jobs. So we need to look at that aspect. Our education has to be, we need to review our curriculum, especially from the primary, secondary school to the tertiary level, to see what kind of graduates we are bringing out on the streets. You know, in Nigeria, the jobs are not there. Civil service jobs are not there.
So looking at the human security angle is extremely important.
Yeah,
well, gentlemen,
absolutely.
It's a fine place to leave it. I have gained a lot in this segment, and I believe our viewers have as well. We have to thank you both for coming on Sunrise Daily. Greg Gesele is a retired Assistant Commissioner of Police and also a member Association of Chiefs of Police. And Dr. Yakubu Joseph is a security and peace researcher and also a political geographer. Sunrise Daily continues in a moment. Please stay with us.